The warship Ecliptica shuddered through the void like a wounded beast, its hull plates groaning under the strain of recent battle. Sparks rained from overhead conduits on the maintenance deck, illuminating the dim space in erratic flashes of blue and orange. J.S. Morin Jace to anyone who bothered asking, crouched beside an exposed plasma relay, his gloved hands steady despite the tremor running through the deck. His armor, once a pristine matte gray standard issue for the United Terran Coalition, now bore cracked spiderwebbing across the chest plate and scorch marks that told stories of near misses. Sweat beaded on his brow beneath the cracked visor he had pushed up, and the metallic tang of ozone filled his lungs with every breath. Beside him, impossibly still amid the chaos, sat Lysura Vaelthur of the 7th House of Keleth. Her armor gleamed even in the poor light moon silver alloy, etched with angular runes that seemed to drink in the shadows rather than reflect them. Long ears curved gracefully back from her face, tipped with faint luminescence, and her eyes held the cold sparkle of distant stars flecked with silver. Scars traced elegant patterns across the visible skin of her neck and jaw, badges of honor among her people, yet they only made her look more untouchable. She watched him work with the detached curiosity one might reserve for a peculiar insect. "You're slow, human," she said, her voice low and resonant, carrying the faint harmonic undertone common to Keleth's speech. "Your species fights like glass vases hurled at cannons." Entertaining, in a tragic way, Jace snorted without looking up, twisting a micro-wrench into a stubborn coupling. "We call it courage, or stubbornness. Depends on who's still breathing at the end." He paused to wipe grime from his hands onto his thigh plating. "Besides, vases thrown hard enough can crack cannons. Physics doesn't care about dignity." Lysura tilted her head, the motion sending a soft chime from the tiny bells woven into her braided hair, a sound too delicate for someone who had once led boarding actions against human frigates. "Curious. You speak of dignity while elbow-deep in your primitive wiring. Tell me, J.S. Morin, are you ever curious about what's under this armor?" She gestured to her own plating with a gaunted hand, the motion languid yet deliberate. Jace finally glanced at her, one eyebrow raised beneath a smudge of carbon. The question hung between them like charged particles. He considered the obvious answers, the ones that would earn him a plasma blade through the chest, and discarded them. Instead, he leaned back on his heels, wiping sweat from his eyes. "Honestly, I'm more curious about what's under your attitude. The armor's just metal. Pretty metal, sure. But the attitude? That's the real fortress." For a heartbeat, Lysura froze. Not the dramatic stillness of combat readiness, but something softer, unguarded. Her silver-flecked eyes widened fractionally, pupils contracting as though a new spectrum of light had just entered her world. The chime of her harebells fell silent. Even the ship's ambient hum seemed to quiet in deference. Jace pressed on before the moment shattered. "Look, I've seen enough armored types across 3 sectors to know the plating doesn't tell the whole story. Yours screams lineage, victories, oaths, probably weighs as much as my entire childhood. But that's surface. I want to know the person who chooses to carry all that weight and still finds time to mock a human fixing a relay instead of just shooting him and being done with it." The ship's II, a dry feminine voice that had taken to sarcasm after too many hull breaches, chimed in over the intercom. "Alert. Keleth warrior emotional response detected. Probability of sudden violence, 47%. Recommend increasing distance by at least 2 meters, Technician Morin." Jace laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Even the ship fears you more than a vacuum leak." "That's impressive." Lysura's gaze lingered on him, assessing. When she spoke again, the harmonic edge had softened. "You speak like someone who has lost battles. Not just against enemies, but against himself." He shrugged, returning to the relay. "Grew up in a nowhere colony, endless cornfields, bad weather, worse prospects. Fighting out here beats dying of boredom back home. Plus, it gave me time to get creative with insults." A quiet laugh escaped her low, like wind through crystal chimes. The sound surprised them both. Her features eased, the perpetual sharpness around her mouth relaxing into something almost approachable. You are unusual. Flattery will get you everywhere, Jace muttered, ducking under a console to reach a deeper panel. Electricity arced across his arm, and he yelped, jerking back. Damn it, Ecliptica, are you trying to kill me? Affirmative, the AI replied instantly, with permission from command. Unfortunately, your continued survival is statistically improbable, but persistent. Lysura's laughter returned. Fooler this time. She covered her mouth with one hand, an oddly human gesture for someone so alien. Weakness detected. The vessel senses it. Jace rubbed his stinging arm. Jealous, that's all. I've been giving you all my attention lately. Lysura studied him in the flickering light. You smile even when in pain. You speak to machines as though they listen. You question armor instead of fearing it. Why? He considered the question while rerouting a bypass circuit. Talking keeps me sane. Reminds me I'm still alive in all this metal and vacuum. And the armor? I've worn enough of it to know it hides more than it protects sometimes. Yours looks like it was forged to declare who you are before you even open your mouth. Heavy by design. She touched the crust on her chest plate, a stylized seventh spiral encircled by blades. Blood daughter of the seventh house. Victories etched in alloy. Oaths bound in molecular weave. It is not merely protection. It is declaration. Jace nodded slowly. Sounds exhausting. Exhausting, she echoed, tasting the word. A panel sparked nearby, and she caught his flinch with amusement. Yet you propose no fear of it. Only curiosity about what lies beneath. Not the flesh, he clarified quickly. The person. The one who laughs at electrocuted humans and still helps fix relays instead of letting the ship vent us both. Silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of cooling systems. Lysura shifted closer, her armored knee brushing his. You are the strangest human I have encountered. Your favorite, though, he said with a grin. She did not deny it. They worked in companionable quiet for a time. Jace muttered curses at stubborn bolts. Lysura handed him tools with precise efficiency. At one point she reached over to steady a vibrating conduit, her gauntlet dwarfing his hand. He glanced up. Your ship's design makes no sense. No labels, no color codes, just instinct. Instinct is reliable, she replied. Your vessels are tin cans with manuals taped to the walls. They got me here, he countered. Character in the flaws. She regarded the damaged bulkhead. Your people hide fear with humor. Smart ones do, he admitted. Fear's like mold. Ignore it, it grows. Laugh at it. Sometimes it shrinks. Odd metaphors. Not all good ones are elegant. A spark jumped. He cursed it again. Lysura offered her hand without a word. He took it, letting her steady him as he reached deeper into the machinery. Her grip was firm, unyielding, yet careful. What happens after this war? He asked suddenly. I serve the next, she said simply. And if there was no armor? Just you? She paused. No one has asked. The relay finally clicked into place. Power hummed back through the line, lights stabilizing overhead. Jace sat back, exhaling. Truce then, we share stories. I tell you about the time I set my tent on fire trying to cook. You tell me about being raised for battle. Lysura loosened a single plate on her vambrace, revealing a glimpse of dark undersuit and faint bioluminescent markings along her wrist. No crown, only duty. Honor, sacrifice. Exhausting, he repeated softly. She looked at him, really looked. Perhaps. The ship lurched slightly, a reminder that peace was temporary. But in that moment, amid the sparks and silence, something shifted. Not armor removed, but walls cracked. Jace smiled. You smiled. I'm doing something right. Lysura's eyes held his. Perhaps. The maintenance deck light steadied at last, bathing the narrow corridor in a cold, clinical white that made every dent and scorch mark stand out like accusations. Jace Morin leaned against the bulkhead, chest plate unlatched at the collar so he could breathe something other than recycled sweat and burnt insulation. Across from him, the Sura Veilther remained seated on an overturned munitions crate. One long leg crossed over the other, the silver of her armor catching the overhead glow like liquid mercury. Neither spoke for several minutes. The only sounds were the low thrum of the Ecliptica's reactors, the occasional hiss of a pressure valve equalizing, and the faint, irregular ticking of cooling metal. Jace broke the quiet first. "You didn't have to stay." Most Khalif officers would have walked off the second the relay hummed back online. Protocol, dignity, whatever you call it. Lasura's gaze drifted to the newly restored power conduit snaking along the ceiling. Tiny indicator lights pulsed green in sequence, a small victory in a war measured in light years and body counts. "Protocol would have me execute you for speaking so familiarly to a blood daughter of the seventh house," she said without heat. "Yet here I sit. Curious, he echoed, tasting the word. "That's twice you've used it tonight. Starting to think it's your favorite." She tilted her head, the motion sending those delicate harebells chiming once. "It is not a word we employ lightly. Among my people, curiosity is permitted only when the answer cannot be obtained through force or lineage. You are an anomaly. Therefore, curiosity is sanctioned." Jace chuckled, the sound rough against the sterile air. "Sanctioned curiosity. Sounds like a fancy way of saying you're bored, and I'm the least boring thing in a 10-kilometer radius." "Accurate," she conceded. A pause, then quieter. "Show me." He blinked. "Show you what?" "The thing you spoke of earlier." She gestured toward his partially opened collar. "The person beneath the armor. Not the flesh. The story. You offered truce." "Stories for stories." Jace rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly aware of how grimy his undersuit must look next to her pristine plating. "You sure? Mine's not exactly noble lineage and molecular oaths. It's mostly dirt, bad decisions, and one spectacularly failed attempt to grow prize-winning squash." Her lips curved barely a smile, more the suggestion of one. "I have heard worse origin tales from warriors who later died honorably. Begin." He exhaled through his nose, and sat on the deck plating opposite her, knees drawn up, elbows resting on them. The metal was cold, even through his suit liner. "All right. Small colony world, New Canaan, yeah, we named it that. Humans love irony. Endless flatland, wind that never stops, soil so stubborn it'd rather starve you than grow anything worth eating. My father was a soil technician, spent his life arguing with dirt. My mother taught children who mostly wanted to be anywhere else. I was the oldest of 4. Means I learned early how to stretch rations, patch roofs with whatever didn't blow away, and talk fast when the bailiff droid showed up." Lasura listened without interrupting, silver-flecked eyes steady. "Got conscripted at 17, he continued. Coalition needed bodies faster than volunteers. Basic training was 6 weeks of mud, screaming sergeants, and learning which end of the rifle not to point at yourself. After that, they shipped us to the perimeter campaigns. First drop was on a moon called Ash 9. No atmosphere worth speaking of. We hit dirt or what passed for it running. Lost half the platoon in the first 90 seconds to automated turrets we didn't even know were there. I survived because I tripped over a rock and landed in a crater just as the plasma wave rolled through." He laughed once, short and bitter. "Heroic, right? Pure dumb luck. They gave me a commendation anyway. I showed initiative under fire. Initiative. I was just too clumsy to die on schedule." Lasura's expression remained unreadable, but she leaned forward fractionally. "You mock your own survival. Easier than pretending it was skill," he said. "After Ash 9, it was one meat grinder after another. By the time I made corporal, I'd stopped counting friends. Stopped counting enemies, too. They all started looking the same under the helmet, scared, tired, just trying to make it to tomorrow. Then we boarded the ship, Ecliptica, supposed to be our ticket to a quiet sector. Instead, we ran straight into your fleet at the edge of the Veil Nebula." He met her gaze. "That's when I first saw you. Not up close. Just a silver streak cutting through our formation like a blade through paper. Your boarding pod punched through Deck 7. I was on damage control. Saw you step out, armor shining even in the red emergency lighting. You moved like gravity didn't apply to you. Killed 12 of us in under 30 seconds. Clean, professional. I hid behind a coolant tank and prayed you wouldn't look left. Lasura's eyes flickered, something almost like discomfort. I remember that engagement. The human resistance was tenacious. Tenacious is one word for it, Jay said dryly. We call it too stubborn to know when we're dead, anyway. After that fight, the coalition sued for local truce. Ship-to-ship parley. Engineers from both sides got sent to patch the worst hull breaches before we all vented into hard vacuum. That's how I ended up elbow-deep in relays with a Caliph noble watching me like I might sprout tentacles. She studied him for a long moment. You do not hate me. Should I? Most humans would. Most humans haven't spent 3 hours listening to you complain about how primitive our plasma couplings are, he shot back. Besides, hate's heavy. Carries around extra mass. I've got enough weight on me already. Lasura rose smoothly to her feet, armor plates whispering against one another. She stepped closer until only a meter separated them. Up close, he could see the faint bioluminescent traceries beneath the skin of her throat, pale violet lines that pulsed slowly, like distant nebulae breathing. Your story lacks glory. Never claimed otherwise. Yet you wear the armor of a soldier. Same as you, he pointed out. Difference is, yours was probably custom forged in some sacred foundry with chanting priests and everything. Mine was stamped out on a factory line in low orbit over a planet I've never even visited. Both do the same job. Keep the vacuum out. Keep the bullets or plasma bolts in. She reached out, hesitated, then brushed one gauntlet fingertip along the cracked edge of his chest plate. The contact was so light he barely felt it through the layers. This fracture runs parallel to your heart. Plasma lance grazed me. 2 centimeters to the right, and I'd be a very short obituary. You kept fighting. Had to. People were counting on me to keep the air breathable. Lasura withdrew her hand. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked almost uncertain. Among my people, scars are recorded. Each one is given a name, a lineage, a verse in the Book of Honors. Yours are hidden beneath ceramite and carbon weave, forgotten. Not forgotten, Jay said quietly. Just not broadcast. I know where every mark came from. That's enough. She regarded him in silence. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached for the locking seam at her left vambrace. A soft pneumatic hiss, a click of disengaging maglocks. The plate came away in her hand, revealing the matte black undersuit beneath and the network of silver scars that traced geometric patterns across her forearm. Not random, deliberate, almost artistic. This one, she said, touching a long straight line that ran from wrist to elbow, is named Verith Call. The Blade of Dawn, earned when I was 19, leading my first void assault. I severed the primary power trunk of a human destroyer while its guns were still tracking my pod. The feedback surge burned through my suit. I finished the mission with a ruined arm and half my squad dead. She met his eyes. It is not beautiful. But it is mine, Jay swallowed. It's honest. Honest, she repeated, as though testing the word's weight. A strange compliment. The best kind, he said. Neither moved for several heartbeats. Then the ship's AI interrupted, voice flat and amused. Alert. Prolonged interpersonal contact between Coalition and Caliph personnel detected. Emotional entanglement probability now exceeds 62%. Recommend psychological separation or immediate mutual execution to preserve operational efficiency. Jay snorted. Thanks for the romance advice, Ecliptica. Lasura actually laughed clear, unguarded, startling in its warmth. The sound echoed off the bulkheads like wind chimes caught in a breeze. When it faded, she spoke softly. I will tell you more, later. If the ship does not vent us both first. Deal, Jay said. She replaced the vambrace with careful precision, seals locking with tiny clicks, but she did not step away. Instead, she extended her hand palm up, gauntlet open. Jace stared at a moment, then placed his own hand in hers. Human skin against Kelith alloy. Warmth against cold metal. Neither spoke. The Ecliptica continued its lonely passage through the dark. The Ecliptica drifted through a thinning nebula cloud, its running lights muted to avoid drawing attention from either side's long-range patrols. Inside, the maintenance deck had become an unofficial neutral ground. Jace had dragged over a pair of battered acceleration couches scavenged from a wrecked shuttle bay. Lasura sat in one with the rigid poise of someone unused to casual furniture, while Jace sprawled in the other, one boot propped on a coolant drum. Between them rested a small portable holo projector he'd jury-rigged from spare parts, a flickering blue disc no larger than a dinner plate that displayed a looping star map of the local sector. Jace tapped the edge of the holo, zooming in on a faint orange icon labeled CTC 4719. That's where we first crossed paths properly. The Parley Point, neutral asteroid belt. Coalition thought your people would respect the white flag. You thought we were bluffing about the truce duration. Both sides were half right. Lasura studied the projection, silver eyes reflecting the tiny orbiting bodies. I was ordered to observe only. No engagement unless provoked. Yet when your engineers began arguing over conduit standards, I found myself intervening. You called our plasma relays barbaric candle stubs, Jace reminded her, grinning. Then you fixed 3 of them faster than our best techs could diagnose the faults. I merely applied logic. She paused, then added more quietly, and curiosity. There it was again, that word. It had started as an accusation, become permission, and now felt almost like a shared secret. Jace killed the holo with a swipe. The blue light died, leaving only the deck's emergency strips and a faint violet glow from the bioluminescent markings visible along Lasura's exposed wrist. Your turn, he said. You showed me 1 scar. There are more. I can count at least 7 visible patterns, even with most of your armor on. She did not flinch at the observation. Instead, she extended her right arm, palm up, and triggered the release on the opposing vambrace. Another soft hiss. The plate came away. Beneath it, the undersuit clung like a second skin, black as deep space, threaded with hair-thin silver conduits that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The scars here were different, thicker, more jagged, overlapping in places as though multiple blades had kissed the same stretch of flesh. This cluster, she said, tracing a trio of parallel lines that ran diagonally from mid-forearm to the inside of her elbow, is named Thalveth Arun, the threefold silence. Earned during the siege of Calyx Verge, my house was tasked with holding the primary relay station against a combined human-Craven assault. The station's outer skin failed on the 3rd day. Atmosphere vented. We fought in vacuum with emergency seals and improvised blades. I killed the Craven Vanguard commander with his own honor glaive after he severed my primary oxygen line. The seal held long enough for reinforcements. The scars are from the glaive's edge and the emergency cauterization gel. Jace leaned closer without thinking. You fought with no air for how long? 14 minutes and 41 seconds. My heart's adapted. Human physiology would have collapsed in under 6. 3 hearts stilled in my chest before the gel set. 3 silences. When they restarted, I was no longer the same daughter who had entered the relay. She met his gaze. We do not speak of near death as tragedy, only as transformation. Jace nodded slowly. We call it buying the farm. Means you almost didn't make it back. Keeps us sane. He hesitated, then reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed one fingertip along the uppermost scar. The contact was feather-light, barely there. Her skin was warmer than he expected, smoother than human despite the raised issue. She did not move. Does it hurt still? Only when I remember the silence. He withdrew his hand. I've got one like that. Not as elegant. Shrapnel on Vega outpost. Took a fragment through the thigh, nicked the femoral. I patched it with a field coagulant and kept moving because the medevac was 30 minutes out and the enemy was 10. Woke up in the infirmary 2 days later with a metal pin to an empty bed next to mine. Lasura listened without interrupting. When he finished, she spoke softly. You carry his silence too. They sat in the shared quiet for a long stretch. Somewhere deeper in the ship, a bulkhead creaked as thermal expansion fought against the cold of space. The sound felt almost intimate. Eventually, Jace cleared his throat. Question, off the record. No ranks, no houses, no coalition. Just us. She inclined her head. Permission. Why stay? You could have requested reassignment after the parley. Gone back to your fleet, your command, your people who understand silence and scars, the way they're supposed to be understood. Instead, you're here, helping me reroute power junctions and listening to stories about failed squash harvests. Lasura considered the question as though weighing a blade's balance, because you ask questions no one else does. Not how many have you killed, not what is your kill ratio. Not even will you betray your people for me. You ask what is beneath. What remains when the armor is removed. No Caliph has ever asked me that, not even my sires. Jace gave a lopsided smile. I'm nosy, bad habit, curiosity, she corrected. Sanctioned. He laughed under his breath. Right, sanctioned. She rose then, graceful despite the weight of her remaining armor, and crossed to one of the wall-mounted tool lockers. From inside she withdrew a slender case of matte obsidian. When she opened it, a soft violet light spilled out. Nestled within lay a single curved blade, no longer than a human forearm, its edge so keen it seemed to bend light. The hilt was wrapped in pale leather that might once have been ivory. This is Veilshur, she said, named for my mother's mother. It has tasted the blood of 8 species. It has never been sheathed unclean. Jace didn't move from the couch. You're showing me a family heirloom that could probably dice me into salad in under 4 seconds. Should I be flattered or terrified? Both, she replied. Then she did something unexpected. She reversed the blade and offered him the hilt. He stared. You're serious? I am. Slowly, very slowly, he stood. His hand closed around the grip. It was surprisingly light, balanced so perfectly that it felt like an extension of his arm rather than a weapon. He didn't swing it, didn't test the edge. Just held it, feeling the faint warmth that seemed to radiate from the metal itself. It remembers, Lasura said. Every life it has taken. Every hand that has held it. When you grip it, you join that memory. Jay swallowed. What does it remember about you? Her voice dropped to a near whisper. That I hesitated. Once. During the purge of Alara Drift. A human child, perhaps. 6 cycles ran into the corridor between my squad and their last defensive position. I could have ended the resistance in a single stroke. Instead, I lowered my weapon. The child lived. The resistance collapsed anyway. But I carry the hesitation like another scar. He turned the blade so its edge caught the light. You let the kid go. I allowed mercy to interrupt duty. It is not spoken of. It would shame my house. Jace handed the blade back carefully, reverently. Then I won't speak of it either. She sheathed Veilshur and closed the case. When she looked at him again, something fundamental had shifted in her expression. Not softness exactly, recognition. You do not fear the blade, she observed. I fear plenty of things, he admitted. Dying alone, forgetting the people I've lost. Becoming someone who doesn't hesitate when a kid runs into the line of fire. The blade? That's just metal with a long memory. I respect it. I don't fear it. Lasura set the case aside. Then, in a motion so deliberate it felt ceremonial, she released the main chest plate of her armor. It separated with multiple soft clicks and came away in her hands. Beneath it, the undersuit hugged her torso, outlining lean muscle and the tracery of more scars, some faint, some angry red, all arranged in deliberate symmetry. She did not remove the rest, not yet, but the removal of even that single large plate felt seismic. You asked what is beneath, she said. This is part of the answer. Jace didn't stare, didn't leer. He simply looked at the scars, at the strength beneath them, at the person who had chosen to reveal them. "Beautiful," he said. Not flirtatious, honest. Lysura exhaled a sound that might have been relief or surprise. No one has ever called them that. Then they weren't looking. The ship's gravity generators gave a faint stutter, nothing dangerous, just a reminder that systems were still limping. But neither of them moved to check it. Instead, Lysura stepped closer. Close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, despite the undersuit. Close enough to see the individual silver flecks in her irises. "Tell me one more thing," she murmured. "Something small. Something no one else knows." Jace thought for a moment. "I still keep a hollow of my family's last harvest festival. The one before conscription. It's buried in my personal effects locker under 3 layers of spare socks. I look at it when I think I can't keep going. Reminds me there was a time I didn't know what plasma smelled like." She nodded once, as though filing the confession beside her own. Then she reached up slowly and brushed a streak of carbon dust from his cheek with the pad of her thumb. The touch lingered. "Your turn," he whispered. Lysura hesitated. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, "I dream sometimes of fields. Not battlefields. Fields of star blossoms on Kelith Prime, the kind that only bloom once every century. I have never seen them. But in the dream, I walk through them without armor, without weapons. And I am not afraid." Jace smiled small, gentle. "I'd like to see that someday. Perhaps," she said. "If the war ever ends." Neither believed it would, not really. But the possibility hung between them like a fragile new constellation. The Ecliptica had limped into the shadow of a dead gas giant, its rings casting long shifting patterns of dust and ice across the hull like ghostly fingers. Inside, the maintenance deck lights had been dimmed to emergency amber orders from the bridge to conserve power while the ship played possum among the debris field. Jace Morin sat on the edge of one of the acceleration couches, elbows on knees, staring at the deck plating between his boots. Across from him, Lysura Vale stood motionless, chest plate still removed, the violet glow of her bioluminescent markings the brightest thing in the compartment. The air smelled of ozone, overheated relays, and something neither of them could name. Neither had spoken in nearly 20 minutes. Finally, Jace lifted his head. "They're coming." She did not ask who. The sensor ghosts had been flickering on the auxiliary screens for the last hour. Faint drive signatures, too disciplined to be scavengers, too quiet to be pirates. Coalition hunter-killer group, or perhaps a Kelith reclamation flotilla. Either way, the fragile truce that had let them share this deck was about to end in fire. Lysura's voice was calm, almost serene. "My people will demand my return. Your people will demand your head for fraternization. The ship's II has already logged every moment we have spent here." Jace gave a tired half-smile. A soft chime from the intercom. The II's voice, stripped of its usual sarcasm. Incoming encrypted hail on all bands. Coalition Priority Alpha. Demanding immediate surrender of all Kelith personnel aboard. Refusal will be met with disabling fire in T-14 minutes. Lysura did not flinch. They will not fire on their own vessel. Not while it still carries human crew. "They'll board," Jace said. "Fast, hard. And when they see us like this." He gestured between them, her half unarmored, him sitting there in nothing but undersuit and cracked plating. "They won't ask questions. They'll just shoot." She stepped closer until the toes of her boots nearly touched his. "Then we decide now, before they arrive." He looked up at her, really looked. The silver scars across her arms and throat, the faint violet pulse beneath her skin, the way her eyes held starlight even in this dim light. "Decide what?" "Whether we fight them together. Or apart, or not at all." Jace exhaled through his nose. "You're asking me to pick a side. I am asking you to pick a future." Silence stretched again, thinner this time, more brittle. He stood slowly. They were almost the same height with her armor partially shed. He could meet her gaze without tilting his head. I've spent 7 years fighting because someone else told me the enemy wore different armor, different skin, different gods. I'm tired of it. But walking away from my people, that's not just desertion, it's erasure. Everything I was before this war gets written off as treason. Lasura reached out and laid her palm flat against his chest, over the place where his own cracked plate used to cover his heart. The touch was warm, steady. And if your people write you off first? He covered her hand with his own. Human skin against Kelith warmth. Then maybe I stop letting them define me. Her eyes searched his. There is a third path, rare, forbidden by both our codes. But it exists. Tell me. Exile, mutual. We take one of the auxiliary pods. Set course for the uncharted Veil neutral space, claimed by no one. No resupply, no allies. Just the pod's life support and whatever we can carry. We live out our years in the dark between stars, forgotten, free. Jace let out a low, humorless laugh. Romantic. Also insane. That pod has maybe 6 months of consumables if we ration hard. After that, we face the same void every soldier already faces, she finished. Only sooner. And together. He studied her face. The elegant scars. The faint luminescence at her temples. The way her lips pressed together when she was weighing something heavier than a blade. You'd give up your house, your name, your place in the Book of Honors? I would give up the weight, she said quietly. The same weight you have carried since Ash 9. The silence, the expectation. I am tired of being only what they carved me to be. Another chime sharper this time. To -9 minutes. Breaching pods detected launching from Coalition Destroyer Indomitable. Kelith signatures also closing from bearing 047. Estimated intercept in 7 minutes. Jace closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them again, something had settled behind them, something calm, almost peaceful. Okay. We run. Lasura's breath caught just once, barely audible. Then she nodded. The pod bay is 3 decks down. We have 6 minutes to reach it before the first borders breach. They moved together, efficient, wordless. Jace grabbed his emergency kit, med patches, water tabs, a compact multi-tool. Lasura resealed her chest plate with swift, practiced motions, then retrieved the obsidian case containing Veilshire. She clipped it to her belt. Neither took more than they could carry in one hand. There was no time for sentiment. They sprinted through dim corridors, boots ringing on deck plates. Emergency lighting painted everything blood red. Twice they heard distant thumps, boarding clamps locking onto the hull. Once a muffled explosion rocked the ship. Someone had breached a magazine rather than let it fall intact. Deck 7. Pod access corridor. The hatch was already half open, emergency overrides kicking in. Inside, Pod 14B waited small, ugly, utilitarian. Designed for 6 crew in shirt sleeves, not 2 fugitives in armor. Jace slid into the pilot's couch and began pre-flight. Lasura took the co-pilot seat, fingers dancing across Caliph-compatible overrides she had no business knowing. Between them, screens flickered to life, green status lights, dwindling power reserves, a tactical overlay showing incoming contacts like angry hornets. "Strap in," he said. She did. He punched the launch command. The pod's clamps released with a metallic clang. Thrusters fired short, hard burn. The Ecliptica fell away behind them, already shrinking against the gas giant's rings. Aft sensors showed plasma flashes. The 2 fleets had begun exchanging fire, using the crippled warship as a convenient obstacle. Jace kept his eyes on the nav plot. Course set for the Veil, best speed, no beacons, no chatter. We go dark in 30 seconds. Lasura reached across the cramped console and laid her hand over his on the yoke. If we die out there. 30 seconds later, the pod went silent, no emissions, no transponders, just cold metal and momentum carrying them deeper into the black. Behind them, the battle flared bright and brief, then faded into background radiation. Inside the pod, the only sounds were recirculators, their breathing, and the faint chime of Lazura's harebells when she turned her head. Jason strapped first. The space was so small their knees nearly touched. He looked at her, really looked. No armor between them now, except the undersuits and the scars they both carried. "No going back," he said. "No," she agreed. He reached up and brushed a stray lock of silver-threaded hair from her face. She did not pull away. Instead, she leaned in slowly, giving him every chance to stop her. Their first kiss was careful, tentative. Two people who had spent years learning how to kill, trying to learn something softer. It tasted of salt and metal and the faint ozone of damaged ships. It lasted only seconds. When they parted, neither spoke. Words felt too small. Lazura unfastened the last of her upper armor plates, not for practicality, but for ceremony. She set them carefully aside, then helped him remove his own cracked chest piece. She traced the shrapnel scar on his thigh with one fingertip. "This one has no name. Call it whatever you want," she smiled, small, real, unguarded. "Then I name it J. Shira." He pulled her closer. She let him. In the cramped pod, with the stars sliding past the single viewport in perfect silence, they held each other. And somewhere, far behind them, the Ecliptica would burn, its logs would be recovered. Its final transmission would speak of two missing Crew 1 coalition. 1 Seventh House Histories would call it desertion. They would call it freedom.
Se me está trabando un chingo el stream, cabrón. Bueno, espero que me escuchen, güey, pero yo lo tengo bien trabado el stream, Pero cabroncísimo, güey. Dale, misa, cuídate, güey, perdóname la vida, Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going, bro?
Pretty good, man. There's this one. And there's the picture. I don't know if it counts like that.
Where's the scar?
There it is. There has a lot of scars right there. The armor. Does it count or no? Good enough?
Yep.
I was trying to look for a Maki, but I didn't find it.
Oh, yeah, so you've got
There's that back
All
for
right,
you.
thank you. All right, thank you. Appreciate it, man. Verga, güey. No me lo iba a contar, güey. Me zafaste con el sonido, güey. ¿Cuál sonido, güey? O sea, era una Scar, güey. Pero pues, verga. Tranquilo, Jera, se ve y se escucha. Pues sí, güey, pero me da el Minsky porque en mi celular no se ve ni madres. Y no sé,